Hello friends, my name is Dhanunjay and today we are going to continue our discussion on Political Science and International Relations, Paper 2, Section A. In that, I have completed Theories on International Relations and after a break of almost 8 days, I am continuing with the next topic in International Relations, PSIR Paper 2. See, this is the 6th unit that I have started in Paper 2, Section B. We are done with the 5th unit, and in that what we are going to discuss the key concepts of international relations I have started, and in that we started with the thing called power. In my last three classes I discussed about various aspects of power, and this will be the next aspect of power, that is called management of power, in which balance of power one part I have read, I have said you in my past class, and today we are going to continue with the same lecture today on how far balance of power is relevant in the present context. So let me refine the knowledge that you have gained so far as far as management of power is considered. This is the continuation or the next part in the series of balance of power. So I started with balance of power in my last lecture and we are continuing with the same thing. And today we will complete this balance of power. Next we'll be moving to collective security in my next video. So as far as key concepts and this is the syllabus. I just wanted to refresh your brains on what are the contents that are available in the sixth chapter of section A. One is national interest, the other one is security and power, the third one is balance of power and deterrence theory, and then is transnational actors and collective security. In the end, we are going to look at world capitalistic economy and globalization. More or less, globalization and world capitalist economy we have discussed in the Marxist theory of international relations. So today we are continuing with the so-called power concept. I started here with power and we will be continuing with the same topic. Now, in power, let me rewind quickly on what we have read so far. See, as far as in power is considered, we have said what is the concept of power. Power is the central theme or central idea of international relations, yet it is the most contested topic because every theorist has their own way of defining power. If realists say power as military power, the liberals say that power is not just military power, but it is also economic power, soft power, as well as it is business to business, people to people relations. So as far as the elements of power is considered, we have looked at the various elements of power, and then what are the determinants of power. I have also said you the difference between elements of power and the determinants of power in the previous class. If you have any questions or if you have any doubts about this, what is elements of power, what is determinants of power, you can just go to my previous lectures and have a watch and come here. And then I have started with the measurement of power. As far as the measurement of power is considered, I said the classification of Kenneth Walls. He classified how nations can be how nations differ from one country to another country. He said that nations doesn't differ in their functional specialization, but rather they differ only at one aspect, that is called the amount that they possess, the capacity that they possess. What is that capacity that they possess? It can be measured in terms of the power. So this measurement of power is a concept related to the Kenneth Walls, the defensive realist of international relations topic. I have made it very clear at that point of time. I have also taken the polarity thesis. I have discussed various aspects of polarity. What do we mean by multipolarity? What do we mean by bipolarity? What do we mean by unipolarity? And we have also discussed about polarity thesis. If you remember, you can just go to that video. If you have not understood, you can add your comments in the video section. I will try to explain more clearly if you have any doubts. So polarity thesis I discussed on how which type of polarity is existing and which polarity is good for the country or for the nations, and what are the theories that existed in the polarity thesis. If you clearly remember, I said that polarity thesis debate has started only after the Second World War, because this is the time where the Cold War has started and the country was, or the nation was, sorry, the world was divided into two poles. One is the USSR bloc and the other one is the USA bloc, and it has gained its traction much after the end of the Cold War, because the debate intensified only when US has ensured that unipolar world is continuing from 1990 to 2001 particularly. After that, we have moved to again a multipolar world. So which polarity or which type of world is good for the system or for the global system is discussed and debated in this aspect called polarity, and that's why this is called as debates on polarity thesis, right? I made it very clear in that video also. If you have any doubts, you can just go and watch them. Now I have also explained what are the types of power. I explained that this is the concept that was given by Joseph Nye. Joseph Nye has given a concept of hard power, Particularly, he has given the concept of soft power, which is mostly about diplomatic power, right? Then he has combined both and said that it is smart power. Then there is one more thing called sharp power, and then we have seen what is fast power also. You can just rewind the topics whatever we discussed previously. Now we are discussing with power management. I also said in my previous class why power management is very important, because it is the mismanagement of power which is leading to the world and which has resulted in war. The First World War and Second World War is an example of mismanagement of power. So theories has come that yes, in order to establish perpetual peace in the global level or at the international order, then definitely we should manage power very properly. And for that they have come out with two theories, that is called balance of power, if you clearly remember this, and then there is one more thing called collective security. I have started with balance of power and I said various dimensions of balance of power, and today we will be continuing with the same topic of balance of power, and then I will be moving to the so-called collective security in my next class. So with that we'll be doing the concept of power in depth, and we'll be trying to complete this sixth chapter in this week. Next, as far as management of power, I will just quickly rewind. See, this is the topic that I am discussing, and I am going to continue, or I am going to quickly refine or define what we have read so far. I said that power in the international politics has to be managed because mismanagement of power leads to instability and cause for war. This we have studied, right? Hence, in order to ensure enduring peace or perpetual peace, power should be managed. This we discussed. So scholars has proposed different ways to manage the power. The realists say that you go for balance of power. The rebellious say that you go for collective security. Collective security we will see in the next class. So as far as the recap is concerned, I said that okay, management of power, we have started with balance of power, and I have given the concept. Balance of power is more or less related to common sense. This is one scholar called David Hume who said that it is related to common sense, and his famous statement is, as long as common sense is relevant in international in relations, power is balance of power is relevant in international relations. So that was the basic theme of David Hume, and said that okay, common sense is the idea which is propelling countries to go for balance of power. I discussed why he has said that in detail in my last class. And I also said that in order to operate balance of power, there are certain essentialities, or there are certain conditions, or there are certain assumptions which are very essential for balance of power to operate at the global level. And for that, I also said that the nature, if you look at balance of power, the nature of balance of power is related to the nature of Westphalian world order. If you look the world order from 1648 to 1919, and particularly until 1948, the nature of world order is very simple, that the politics was just confined to the regional politics of Europe, as USA continued the policy of isolation, and the rest of the globe was the colonies of the Western countries. So balance of power obviously works only at the regional level and not at the global level. That was the first point that I had made in my previous lecture. And I also said that Westphalian world order, there is states are at states or at war always. The reason being there is no supranational authority and there are multiple powers. Every state used to consider that it is a power, and they used to balance power by forming alliances and by forming counter alliances. So balance of power works only in a multipolar world, and it doesn't operate in unipolar world or bipolar world. That is the takeoff here. So Westphalian world order, again I discussed that Westphalian world order, there is no supranational authority. As a result, state consider themselves as supreme or hegemons. As a result, they try to secure their sovereignty and territorial integrity. As a result, for that they have to go for expanding their power. The moment they are expanding power, they tend to cross their limits and enter into the domains of other countries. Then other countries form alliances, and to counter these alliances, these countries are going to form counter alliances, and then there exists a constant struggle for war. So in a state of anarchy or in the Westphalian world order, balance of power is very, very essential, and we have discussed this in realist theory, where Kenneth Walsh has clearly said that if you want go for power, yes, countries has to go for power maximization. So power acquisition, but that power acquisition should be very limited and it should not be a hegemonic power. The difference between the defensive realists and offensive realists here is John Mearsheimer clearly stated that yes, countries has to go for acquisition of power to the maximum extent, but Kenneth Walsh has limited himself or confined himself to say that okay, you should have only that power which can balance the other country. So this was the themes that we have discussed earlier also. I hope I was just refining all these things so that it has been quite a long time, so it will be good for you also and for me also to continue with the classes for the coming days. Now, what are the techniques of BOP? I said that the basic premise of BOP works on the concept of war because it is an Westphalian world order, and it is an order of anarchy. As a result, states will be always engaged in war, and through war they want to manage balance of power. So the first technique is they want to go for war, and how they go for war? Through forming alliances and forming counter alliances. Then there will be always a quest for increasing the arms. As a result, arms race, and then there is no concept of the called deterrence during that point of time. So these are the techniques of BOP. Deterrence, yes, at one point of time they want to enter into deterrence, but that has been quite possible after nuclear weapons has come into the picture at the global level. So these are the techniques of BOP. Again, I repeat: war, forming alliances, forming counter alliances, and then increasing the arms. So arms race is a one of the basic theme of the techniques of balance of power. And then critiques of BOP. I ended my last class saying the criticisms of balance of power. It was highly criticized by Woodrow Wilson, because Woodrow Wilson was the president during the time of First World War, or after the end of the First World War in the globe, and he was the president of United States of America. He has said, or he has held responsible. He has held balance of power as a responsible factor for the cause of First World War, because balance of power is itself by its nature has the tendency of war. So it was highly criticized by this man called Woodrow Wilson, and there is one more gentleman in India called Jawaharlal Nehru who has criticized balance of power, saying that if countries are going for balance of power, then it is going to increase the instability, because it will be the nervous state of peace. What do I mean by the nervous state of peace? It means that though there exists peace, but it will be always in a nervous state, because no country can be quite sure which country is going to attack this country or that country at any point of time. So Jawaharlal Nehru compared this peace to nervousness, and Woodrow Wilson also compared this with measles and mumps, right? That we have seen. And then we'll be looking at relevance of BOP. So far we discussed all these aspects in my previous lecture. This was a recap that I have done, so that it will be quite good for you also to follow this video, right? We are done with this recap. Today I am concentrating on relevance of BOP, right? So relevance of BOP in the 21st century. See, relevance of balance of power has been highly criticized. I said, after the First World War, because balance of power is the concept of management of power, but it failed to manage power. As a result, First World War has occurred. So there was balance of power was highly criticized, because in itself it is war prone, meaning it leads to arms race, it leads to secret alliances, and it believes that war is a technique to ensure balance. As it has the inherent desire of war to ensure balance, it is not power management, right? Power has to be managed just to avoid war. But this is paradox, that balance of power believes on war to ensure peace. Now this is highly paradox, or highly ridiculous for the theorists to say that balance of power is very very relevant to ensure peace. And this was the statement which was given by the then President of United States of America, Mr. Woodrow Wilson, right? Balance of power. So the question of the relevance of balance of power has come time and again. If after the failure of controlling the First World War, balance of power was first time it was criticized, and then immediately, though it has survived even after the First World War. The reason is, countries. This man called Woodrow Wilson, he gave the concept of collective security through the form of League of Nations. But if you look at League of Nations also, within just 20 years, from 1919 to 1939, we have, that is the interim war period, but within just 20 years the Second World War was started. This is very ironical, even though we have an agency called League of Nations at that point of time. So this shows that, okay, people believe that balance of power has some relevance until Second World War, because League of Nations has failed as such. So balance of power is still a better option than the concept of collective security through League of Nations. So this was the argument which was propounded by the supporters of balance of power after the First World War. However, if you look at the relevance of balance of power after the Second World War, it has become quite irrelevant at the global level. The reason being, I'll tell you all this in my coming slides. The reason being this, after the Second World War, the conditions for the operation of balance of power has changed. Now, as far as this is considered, I said, what are the conditions for the operation of balance of power, right? Balance of power operates on certain assumptions, but these assumptions failed after the Second World War, or these conditions failed after the Second World War. As a result, balance of power was again questioned after the Second World War. Now, after the end of the Cold War, also in 1991, it was in 1990 that Cold War was ended through Molotov Pact, right? It was in the year 1991 that USSR was disintegrated. Now, after the disintegration of USSR, Cold War has formally come to an end, and uh, and the relevance of balance of power was again questioned in an unipolar world which was led by America. And this has become more prominent in the 21st century, where we are again entering into the so-called multipolarity. Now I'll tell you relevance of balance of power in the 21st century through certain stages. What are those stages? After the Second World War, how it was relevant, and after the Cold War, how it was relevant, and how far balance of power is relevant today in the present context of the globe. So this will be my 3 points of discussion. That is, after the Second World War till Cold War, and after the Cold War till global financial crisis, and after the global financial crisis, how the situation or how what for the balance of power is relevant. Now, the crisis of BOP, I said just now, the balance of power came into crisis on a number of occasions. The first occasion is failure to prevent the First World War. I said power has to be managed. Management of power theory, in one aspect of management of power theory is balance of power. You failed to manage the First World War, hence to prevent the First World War, hence balance of power was failed for the first time. Second is, balance of power slowly was replaced by collective security through League of Nations. Yet countries were still dependent on balance of power, because collective security was a very, very new theme to the European powers at that point of time. Next, the third time, balance of power was replaced by nuclear deterrence after the Second World War. Particularly after the Cold War, nuclear deterrence has become the norm of the day. So balance of power has become, or the concept of balance of power was quite redundant in nuclear deterrence theories. We'll look at why nuclear power has made balance of power quite redundant. After the Second World War, the ideal conditions of, see, this is the first thing. After Second World War, BOP has demised. The reason is, the ideal conditions for the operation of balance of power ceased to exist. What are the ideal conditions of balance of power? I said, right, remember this. This is very important. Ideal conditions of balance of power. I said balance of power is a model of Westphalian world order, right? Westphalian world order failed after Second World War. What are the features of the second Westphalian world order? The politics was in the regional context, that is European powers, and none of the other countries were participating in the global politics. This is the first thing of ideal conditions of balance of power. The second one is, it has to be operated in a multipolar world and not a bipolar world, and not in a unipolar world. And then a state of anarchy has to exist, and states has to be expanding their powers. So Westphalian world order is the condition which is very, very ideal for balance of power. But after the Second World War, the conditions of the Westphalian world order was quite changed because of establishment of various factors. That is, uh, I have already discussed this. We'll just go through this relevance, why it is not relevant after the Second World War. I will make these concepts very clear in the coming slides. The ideal conditions in which balance of power operates are, it operates in the regional framework. I said, right? What is this Westphalian world order? It works in the regional context. What is the regional context? Westphalian world order is the world order of European powers, because the rest of the countries were the colonies of Europe, or USA has followed this policy of isolationism. So global politics was the politics of in European countries. As a result, it was just confined. Balance of power has to operate only at the regional framework, but it cannot operate at the global framework. So this is the first important thing that we have to remember. And it operates in a multipolar world. That is the concept of Westphalian world order again. BOP is meant for conventional wars. Now I said, whenever the states are wanting to control power or manage power through balance of power, then they have only one option, that is war. They prefer war to control other country, to manage the other country's power. Now, if this war is based on conventional weapons, that is very fine. But if you are using nuclear weapons for this war to balance the power, then the cost of the war is going to be very huge. so that it is going to destruct both the countries. There will be no winners in nuclear war. Hence, balance of power is relevant only in conventional wars. What is this conventional war? War uh, which uses the conventional weapons and not the nuclear weapons. If you are using nuclear weapons, there is nothing called power itself which will be relevant after the nuclear wars. So balance of power operates only in the domain of conventional wars and not in the times of nuclear wars. So the three ideal conditions are: it operates in a multipolar world, that too in a regional context, and then it has to operate only in conventional sense and not at the nuclear weapons. Right? So this is the relevance. Now, if you look at the failure of balance of power or the relevance of balance of power, these ideal conditions disappeared or vaporized after the Second World War because regional framework, international politics remained no more European politics after the Second World War. The reason being, USA has come out of this policy of isolationism, that is Monroe Doctrine. It has come out of this Monroe Doctrine through another doctrine called Truman Doctrine. So this was the first thing. USA has entered into global politics after the Second World War, particularly after the Second World War, and the rest of the colonies, which used to be the colonies of European countries, they were newly independent countries after the Second World War. If you look at the colonies of Southeast Asia, South Asia, or African countries or Latin American countries, they gained independence after the Second World War. So, global politics is no more regional politics, but they are global in true sense. Global politics are global in true sense after the Second World War. As a result, the first ideal condition for the operation of balance of power is failing. What is the first ideal condition here? The first ideal condition for the balance of power is the regional framework. Now, this regional framework after the Second World War was replaced by the global framework. So that is the failure of first ideal condition of balance of power. And then it operates only in a multipolar world. But if you look after the Second World War, the world was divided into only two poles. One is the capitalist pole led by USA, and there is one more pole called the communist pole, which is led by the USSR bloc. So the countries were no more multipolar after the Second World War, but it was a period of Cold War where the global order was bipolar, which means there are two power authorities. To counter this, we have non-alignment nations forming non-alignment bloc. So if you look, more or less, the global order was a bipolar order and not a multipolar world. As a result, the second condition for the operation of balance of power failed to exist after the Second World War. And balance of power, I said, it operates in conventional war. But if you look, it was in the Second World War that USA has, for the first time and for the last time, particularly or possibly for the first time, and so far it is the only time, which has used nuclear weapons in the context of uh, Nagasaki and Hiroshima. So this is the age of the beginning of nuclear weapons. So conventional warheads were replaced by nuclear warheads. As a result, the third ideal condition for the operation of balance of power failed, which means balance of power system is no more relevant in these, as the ideal conditions have vaporized after the Second World War. So I think you are getting the point. I said what are the ideal conditions for the operation of balance of power, and the ideal conditions has been replaced by these conditions. As a result, balance of power failed to exist after the Second World War. Now we look what I said. Second World War, international politics became international in true sense because USA has joined the international politics from its policy of isolation. Right, it has moved out of its policy of isolation and it started playing a dominant role in the global order. And then decolonization of the third world has taken place. So international politics is no more regional in true sense, but it was in true sense it was a international in true sense. International politics were in true sense, international politics were in true sense representing the politics of the globe, because the third world countries joined the international politics and USA joined. So it was no more confined to European powers. That is the first conditions which is very vital, and it has failed, and it is the condition which was after the Second World War. As a result, the ideal condition of operation of balance of power, that is regional politics, is no more relevant. Right? This is the first thing. So this is the cause for failure of BOP after the Second World War. And then in the multipolar world, I said multipolar world after the Second World War was replaced by bipolar world. Two superpowers existed. There cannot be balance of superpowers because balance of power. What is balance of power? Forming alliances or defeating the other country. But when there are two superpowers, you cannot form into block and you cannot defeat the other power, because even though if you form block, then definitely the other block has equal amount of power to suppress you. As a result, the countries were very cautious that we cannot enter into war in a bipolar world, because there are only two superpowers. And superpowers, I said when I am discussing this measurement of power, I said, right, like there are different types of powers. Superpower, there are great powers, there are middle powers, and then there are small powers. If you remember that lecture, definitely you can connect to this point. See, as far as superpowers, when I was discussing this superpower concept, I said that superpowers cannot be challenged by other powers. Superpower can be defeated by another superpower, but it can be balanced by another superpower at the max, but it cannot be defeated. So that is the thing. There cannot be balancing of superpowers. It is not possible. Superpower can balance a superpower. What do I mean by this? USA can balance USSR, because USA and USSR were the superpowers after the Second World War. But no other country can form alliance and can defeat the other superpower. That is the thing. So in a bipolar world, balance of power system doesn't operate. So it is natural, and so it has it has lost its traction. After the Second World War, conventional weapons were replaced by the nuclear weapons. That is what I said. Nuclear weapons are not the weapons of war, but they are the war of deterrence. Right? In the deterrence concept, I will tell you how what is deterrence and how nuclear weapons are acting as a force of deterrence and preventing to enter into two nations to enter into war. See, if you look after the Second World War, though there were many instances where countries has come very close to war, but they didn't actually turn out to be uh, real wars after the Second World War. Here and though, yes, there exist few wars, but not at the scale of global level like First World War or Second World War. The major reason which acted as a barrier or which has made countries not to go for war is that every country started having these nuclear weapons. Now, whenever the country is having nuclear weapons, it gives deterrence power to the country, which means the other country will get deterred or it will get afraid to attack other country. Say for example, if there are two countries like Pakistan, India and China, both are nuclear powers, though they are coming very close to war, but they are not going to the war of nuclear wars, because there were incidents like Galwan clash here and there, but they are not truly entering into nuclear war. The reason is both countries have nuclear powers, and these nuclear powers are acting as a deterrence so that one country is not attacking the other country. Imagine if China has nuclear weapons and India doesn't have nuclear weapons, definitely by now China should have attacked India a long way back, and it has taken our major territories. But that hasn't happened. The reason being nuclear weapons, India being a nuclear weapon state. So this is the concept of deterrence. That is, nuclear weapons are acting as a deterrent force so that the countries won't become too much reckless and attack the other country. By looking at the utility of nuclear weapons, there was one man called Kenneth Walls who said that nuclear weapons are weapons of peace. Right? He gave this famous statement: "They are the weapons of peace and not the weapons of war." Because by looking at the nuclear weapons, states get deterred to attack the other country. So after the Second World War, nuclear weapons started gaining the traction. Hence, there exists the condition of peace, and there was no more relevance of balance of power. Why? Balance of power, major technique is war. Countries are not entering into wars because of nuclear power. As a result, balance of power became irrelevant. So, invention of nuclear weapons made the balance of power concept redundant. That is what I am reiterating again and again. So this is what I discussed. The ideal conditions for the operation of balance of power failed after the Second World War. What is the technique of balance of power? Balance of power is to punish potential aggressor and re-establish the balancer, right? They want to punish the aggressor. That is the basic technique. How they can punish? Through waging war. Why Germany was attacked by Russia, Britain, USA, and France? Because they wanted to control the aggression of Germany, all these countries. So they formed into an allied force and they have started attacking Germany on all sides. And this is called the Great Second World War. How you are controlling this potential aggressor, that is Hitler? You are controlling Hitler through the concept of waging war. So this is what I said. This is called balance of power. You are maintaining the balance of the rest of the globe by forming into alliance and countering Germany. So this is the technique on which balance of power depends. What do I mean by this? Again, the same theme. Balance of power's core idea is war. Through war, you can balance the other country. But the nuclear weapons came into existence, which means that there is no more concept of war, but just the concept of deterrence. Since nuclear weapons are weapons of mass destruction, and the use of nuclear weapons can assure destruction, hence war will become redundant. I said the same thing. The more you have nuclear weapons, countries will deter from attacking you. As a result, war will not be a possible option, or war becomes redundant. So balance of power as such becomes redundant. In a situation when country possess nuclear weapons for strategic stability, then we have to rely on deterrence rather than balance of power, right? You cannot depend on balance of power like India and China. India and Pakistan can form into a balance and then it can counter China. No, it cannot be possible until and unless you have deterrence power, or your nation has deterrence power. You cannot deter the other country from attacking your country. So deterrence is a vital concept than balance of power in the Second World War or post Second World War scenario. As a result, there was this man called Arnold Wolfer, who said that in order to differentiate between the balance of power and the deterrence, you are understanding, right? Balance of power and deterrence. Balance of power, I said, countries will be forming into alliances and counter alliances and wage war in order to manage power. But deterrence is like you possess nuclear weapons, as a result, the countries will become afraid or they get afraid to attack your country. So, this is like a threat, right? You are threatening the other country from attacking. But here, balance of power is just a balance. So, and deterrence, he has coined the term called balance of terror. So you are trying to balance the terror. This is called deterrence theory. If you are trying to balance the terror which is attained through nuclear weapons, you are understanding the point, right? The moment you are having nuclear weapons, then definitely it will create terror and it gives you deterrence capacity. And that is why this Arnold Wolfer, he said that states go for balancing the terror and not really the balance of power. So, which means again the same thing, balance of power has gained, or at the global level, it has almost lost its relevance. This is post Cold War. I said until this is I said though so far we have discussed the existing scenario after Second World War till the time of Cold War, right? Remember again the same concepts. I said three ideal conditions. Those concepts are from Second World War until the Cold War. After the disintegration of USSR, again the global order was changed. That is, the countries were no more bipolar, they were the unipolarity that started existing at the global level. If you look, US hegemony has started after post Cold War. So global order has changed after 1990s. As a result, the relevance of balance of power was again gained traction, because the global order, they thought that okay, multipolarity is going to come in the place of bipolarity. We will look how far it is true. The context of questions after post Cold War is because the world order has changed again. World has become increasingly interconnected and complex interdependence. Hence, it is very difficult for the countries to go for war. This is what the change that has seen after the disintegration of USSR. In my previous classes, also I said that particularly when I was discussing the theories of Marxism in international relations, Then I said that globalization was a phenomena which was occurred after the Cold War, or after the end of Cold War and after Russia's disintegration has started. It was in the year 1995 through the establishment of World Trade Organizations, which indicated the entry of capitalism at the global level, or we call this as operation of globalization at the at the world order or at the world level. This is called globalization. What is globalization? Globalization is operationalization of capitalism at the global order, right? This is what we discussed. So they started questioning the relevance whether war can be possible in an interconnected world. There is rise of symmetric actors after the Second World War, particularly after the end of the post Cold War. Certain groups called terrorist groups gained traction. It was particularly after 1990s and 1995s. One change is in the economy, and the other change is at the role of non-state actors like the terror organizations. And I said whenever I was discussing balance of power, it was an Westphalian world order concept. And in the Westphalian world order, if you look, it is a state-centric theory. If you remember this, again, Westphalian world order thinks that states are the only actors and there is no actor above the state or over the state. As a result, balance of power operates only in the static concept, which is state related. But the rise of non-governmental organizations or the terror organizations, so that there has been an increasing tendency of non-state actors. So balance of power as a result, which was just operating in the uh, sphere of the state, was challenged again. So relevance was again questioned because of the changing in the economic structure of the global order and the changes that has taken place and the rise of the non-state actors like the terror organizations after the Cold War. Next, rely. So they said that okay, balance of power was again becoming very weak. So, realist, as balance of power is the concept of realist, these scholars have made some conceptual innovations to say that balance of power is still relevant. Because this is the balance of power was the brainchild of realist. As a result, they came out with some arguments saying that okay, balance of power is still relevant. Many people are telling that balance of power is not relevant after the Second World War or after the Cold War, but balance of power has its relevance still. So this was an argument which the realist has made. And they said that in the 21st century, balance of power is relevant. In a situation of unipolarity, countries go for soft balancing rather than hard balancing. So they came out with a new concept called yes, even after the end of the Cold War, balance of power exists, but this balance of power is soft balancing and not hard balancing. What do you mean by hard balancing? Forming military alliances and waging wars. But in soft balancing, countries will be grouping in the form of economic groups or in the form of political groups or in the form of social groups. As a result, they try to social or cultural groups. As a result, they try to pressurize the other country through these groups. That is called soft balancing rather than hard balancing. This was just a concept which realists gave, and they said that balance of power, though it has lost its original nature in the form of hard balancing, today the countries are going for soft balancing. Particularly, they also say that the concept of asymmetrical balancing. They gave the concept of asymmetrical balancing. This is very important. Asymmetrical. Today, the countries are entering into balancing in an asymmetrical manner. What do this asymmetrical balancing mean? Earlier, it used to be, if remember the slide that I started, right? Balance of power, they want to balance symmetrically. If one part is increasing, then they want to balance equally on the other part. But today, this is not the case. Asymmetrical balancing. Why asymmetrical balancing? Today, states are no more threats for other states. It is the terrorist organizations which are the threats of the other states. As a result, states are collaborating together and they are fighting against terror organizations. So they gave a beautiful relevance for balance of power even after the Cold War, saying that balance of power today is no more in hard terms, but it is in soft terms. And there is one concept called asymmetrical balancing. The concept of asymmetrical balancing is that countries do not go for fighting with each other, but they form coalition of countries to fight against the transnational terror organizations. Terror organizations, in order to fight these terror organizations, countries are coming together. So this makes the term asymmetrical balancing, because this will have more power and these countries, terror organizations, will have less power compared to the coalition of powers. As a result, today balance of power still exists, but this is just a asymmetrical balancing. I think I'm getting the point. The first thing which I said, you are getting the point. The first thing which I said is how far balance of power is relevant. I said balance of power has started losing its relevance because the ideal conditions for the operation of balance of power failed to exist after the Second World War. What are those ideal conditions? I said that balance of power operates only in regional context. I said balance of power operates only in conventional wars. I said balance of power operates only in state-centric theories and not in non-state actors. But in order to ensure that balance of power is still relevant, the realists whose idea of balance of power is their brainchild, as a result, the realists came in support of balance of power and they started saying that today countries are going for soft balancing or not hard balancing. In fact, they are right to some extent. And then they said that they have given the concept of asymmetrical balancing, right? This is how they said. Now, if you look whether balance of power is redundant altogether, so far I discussed how far balance of power was relevant after the after the Second World War and after the Cold War. If you look, yes, it started losing its traction. But can we say definitely that balance of power altogether has lost its relevance? No, it has started declining its relevance at the global level, but still it has some functionality or utility at certain aspects. We look at what are those aspects where balance of power is still relevant. You're getting the point, right? I said how balance of power was not relevant at the global level after the Second World War. I said how balance of power started losing its traction after the Cold War. Still then, relays came and they said that, okay, balance of power is not at all irrelevant. They had its relevance in some other forms. But can we say really balance of power has no relevance, or has it become redundant altogether? Definitely no. The reason is we can see balance of power concept remaining still in most important regions of the world, that is the Asia Pacific, Indo Pacific regions. If you look at the Asia Pacific politics today, that is after the 2008, this is, you can see, after 2008 the global politics again has started shifting to Asia Pacific region and Indo Pacific region, where China and India are playing a vital role, and USA is trying to enter into this, and Russia is trying to enter this, and Japan is trying to enter this, Australia is trying to enter this. So if you look at this world order, particularly at this region of Asia Pacific, not at the global level, at least at the regional aspects of Asia Pacific, at the Indo Pacific, then balance of power seems to have certain ideal conditions to operate. What are those ideal conditions again? It is the regional context. Yes, balance of power is a regional context, as this is a regional framework. There has to be multipolar or multiple countries to go for balancing. Yes, this gives certain life to balance of power, and it is regional context in true sense. Yes. However, nuclear weapons, yes, they might not go for nuclear war, but there is high probability of countries going for conventional war again. They don't fight with the nuclear weapons or atom bombs. They just go for the conventional wars, right? So there is the author or the thing scholars say that balance of power has not lost its relevance altogether. It still has certain relevance at the regional context, particularly in the region of Indo-Pacific or the Asia-Pacific regions, because they have the fertile conditions for the operation of balance of power. Though, what are those conditions? One is it is operating in the regional context and it is having a multipolar world outlook, and though they have nuclear weapons, there is every possibility that they don't go for nuclear war, but there is a condition that countries might enter into conventional war. What do I mean by this? India and China might not go for nuclear wars directly. They may go for conventional wars, like physical abuses or muzzle fight at the muzzle fight, or throwing pebbles or throwing stones on one soldiers and other soldiers. So this is a conventional warfare, and the scholar said that yes, this is one type of conventional warfare that might exist in this region particularly. So we cannot say that balance of power is altogether irrelevant or redundant. It is still relevant in the regional context, though at the global level it has lost its relevance, or it has lost its original existence as such. Now, as there is power transition in the Indo-Pacific, China is challenging US hegemony. So USA has entered into this area. USA adapted the policy of Asia pivot policy. Asia pivot policy was the policy of USA's towards the Indo-Pacific region. USA later changed this name to Asia Rebalancing. He has given the name called Asia Rebalancing, and the core idea of the Asia Pacific is that USA is buckpassing to India and it is using India as a swing state. What do I mean by this? At the Indo-Pacific region or at the Asia Pacific region, balance of power still is having certain relevance. That is the point. Balance of power is very important dynamics between India and China. India's internal balancing will not be sufficient. I said Kenneth Walls clearly said that countries can go for balancing in two ways. Either they can become internally very strong or they can go outside and take external help. If they are taking external help, then it will be resembling in the form of Quad, because India doesn't have the internal capacity to challenge a country like China. So it is going and entering into balancing agreements with Japan, with Australia, and that was the outcome of the strategic partnership of Quad that has been an external balancer to India, to China, sorry. So Quad is an external balancer to China. So balance of power seems to be operating at this region. India go for external balancing because it doesn't have any internal capacity to counter China. So it has entered into Quad. As a result, there is huge probability of conventional war, though the countries might not enter into nuclear war. Why? Though both countries has nuclear weapons, both countries also have the policy of no first use. India has no first use policy. At the same time, China has no first use policy. So, as the countries are having these no first use policies, then definitely they don't use nuclear weapons. They have to go for conventional war. So, balance of power again. The ideal condition is it operates in conventional wars. So, balance of power seems to be possible in this context. Hence, the moment imbalance becomes significant, China goes for attacking India. If you are looking at the imbalance, if India is imbalancing with China or China is imbalanced, China thinks that okay, India is not balancing properly, definitely China is going to attack India, right? So it is imperative on the part of India to seek external balancing whenever is possible, in whatever way is possible. So it is entering into Quad, because Quad is the only way in which India can counter the China. Otherwise, China thinks that India is not balancing properly and it definitely enters into conventional war with India, though it might not be a nuclear war. The reason is again no first use policy of both countries. So balance of power seems to be relevant at least in the Asia Pacific region, because there is a probability of war to exist. What is this war? Again, a conventional war. So Stephen Walt said that countries do not balance power. Actually, countries balance threat. This is the concept of balancing of threat. It means China power is no. What is this balance of threat? Remember, I said Arnold Woodford concept of balance of terror. Now there is one more. What is this balance of terror? In the theory of deterrence, nuclear weapons, deterrence, and this is called balance of terror. Don't confuse this. Right? Balance of power was the concept of realist, particularly the concept given by Kenneth Walls, the defensive realist. And then there is one more theme called balance of terror. What is this balance of terror? Look, it was given by the person called Stephen Walt. Remember the names. Balance of terror. What do you mean by balance of terror? China power is increasing, right? Let me tell you an example. China power is increasing. So in order to balance China, then definitely India and Pakistan should go together, because both countries, if China is becoming a preponderant power, then it is not only threat to India, it is also threat to Pakistan in ideal sense. So in ideal sense, Pakistan and India should come together so that their power gets more and they can counter China effectively. But in true sense, it is not happening on the ground level. Pakistan is moving very close to China rather than moving to India. The reason is that is called the balancing of threat. Because Pakistan doesn't feel why Pakistan is moving very close to China, not moving close to India. The reason is Pakistan doesn't feel China as a threat. India is feeling threat, but Pakistan doesn't feel threat. What Pakistan feels threat is India. As a result, Pakistan wants to counter its threat, so it is moving to the towards China. So, in practical sense, as per Stephen Walt, balance of power is doesn't exist. Rather, it is balancing of terror or threat. Sorry, terror is balancing of terror is this concept. Balance of threat means the country which you feel very secure, you are going to form alliance with that country and you are going to counter the other country which you feel as threat rather than the true balance of power. In true balance of power, India and Pakistan should balance China, but it is not happening in practicality. In practicality, what is happening? India is one block and China and Pakistan together they are coming together. Why this condition is existing? This condition is existing because countries feel more safe in balancing of threat rather than balancing of the power. I think you got the point. So Kenneth Orgonsky, there is one more person, gave the concept of power transfer. What is this power transfer? As per Orgonsky, he says that stability of the world or the stability or peace can exist only when there is huge gap between the powers. Huge gap between the powers. What do I mean this? If China is having preponderant power and if there is one country like India, or say for example, there is one country like Africa, they never go for war because in no way Chinese power or African power can defeat Chinese power. China has ultimate power compared to Africa. So when there the gap between the power is very high, countries become reluctant to wage war. Africa will not go to war with China, right? Because countries become reluctant to wage war. They get afraid because China is having preponderant power compared to Africa. As a result, African countries don't go for war. Why India and China always goes for war? Because the gap between the powers is very, the measure of power is going to be very less. India has nuclear weapons. China has nuclear weapons. China has 330 nuclear weapons. India has around 105 nuclear weapons. If you look at the gap compared with Africa, Africa has zero nuclear weapons. Now this makes the gap 330, but this makes the gap 200. If you look at India and Pakistan, Pakistan has around 120 nuclear weapons, whereas India has around 110 nuclear weapons, which means the gap is very less. As a result, there is always a talk or a debate of war between India and Pakistan. The reason is that the gap between the powers is very less, and two countries they try to go for transitions, or whenever there is huge gap between the powers, countries never go for war. That was the concept which was given by Orgonsky. So as far as Orgonsky is considered, you can be quite sure that Orgonsky said that countries never go for war when there is huge gap between the powers, because the countries will be very reluctant to go for waging war. This is a concept which was another concept which was given by Kenneth Orgonsky. So this is what the relevance of balance of power is. What I just quickly refine what I have said. I have said balance of power. Balance of power is a technique to manage power. In order to manage power, there are two things. One is balance of power. One is collective security. Collective security is League of Nations, United Nations Organization. This we'll see in the next class in detail. But remember this balance of power we have seen. Balance of power we have seen. What is balance of concept of balance of power? Right, David Hume's common sense concept. And then what are the ideal conditions or the assumptions? I said it operates in the Westphalian world order. And then I said, what are the techniques of balance of power? I said, what are the techniques? The major technique is war. As a result, it was highly criticized by this man called Woodrow Wilson and our Prime Minister, first Prime Minister, Mr. Nehru. Then I have discussed what is the crisis of balance of power, or how many times balance of power faced crisis, and whether this crisis has made balance of power irrelevant. So in this context, we have seen relevance of balance of power. So today I discussed the relevance of balance of power. I discussed this after the Second World War, because balance of power relevance was questioned after the Second World War. So relevance after the Second World War, relevant after the Cold War, and after relevant after the global financial crisis, particularly after the rise of terror organizations. So in this context, I said after the Second World War, balance of power really started losing its shine because the ideal conditions totally disappeared for operation of balance of power. And then after the Cold War, the ideal conditions started to emerge, but then again, they really said that the balance of power is not seen in the original context, but balance of power can be seen in an alternative way. What is that alternative way? Countries are balancing not in hard terms but in soft terms, that is economic interdependence. They are going to form alliances based on economy, based on cultural relations, based on social relations, and not on military relations. And the balance of power is not symmetrical that used to exist earlier, but it was asymmetrical because the rise of terror organizations. So this is after Second World War. But if you look after global financial crisis with the rise of China, again this has given the concept of relevance of balance of power at the regional context, particularly in the region of Asia Pacific or Indo Pacific. Right? In this region, they started questioning how far balance of power is very, very relevant. So we discussed that balance of power, though it started losing its shine at the global level, it has its relevance. It is no more redundant or not at all relevant. Sorry, it has its relevance even in the today's context, particularly at the regional level, because at the regional level, ideal conditions for balance of power still exist. And then I have given some references of other thinkers like Organsky, Kenneth Organsky, and I also given the context of this man called Balance of Terror by Stephen Walt. Remember the names: Stephen Walt given Balance of Terror, Balance of Threat is given by Arnold Urfer, Balance of Threat is in the context of deterrence. I said nuclear wars as acting as deterrence, and this was Kenneth Walls who has said that they are the weapons of peace. So Alfred Werner Wolfer gave the concept of balance of terror, whereas here it is balance of threat, the concept of Stephen Walt. So these are the things that we discussed today, and we are done with balance of power. In my next class, I will be taking this concept called collective security. With collective security, we'll be done with our concept of power. So friends, this is what the class is. From tomorrow, I'll try to make two videos. One video in on IGP, and one video I'll be continuing with this discussion. So thanks for watching this video. Do like and follow our channels. There was one Telegram channel where we are uploading the links of all this, and we are uploading the notes in PPT format in that Telegram group at Danu underscore PSIR. We are also giving this description in the description. You can just go and subscribe to it. Right, friends, thank you very much for giving this opportunity. Let us meet in the next class very soon. Have a nice day.